G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Bob Gauvreau from Gauvreau CPA, based just out of Toronto, Canada. Thanks for your time today, Bob.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Grant Cadone's 10X stages. We've had a few guests come to us through what they do. So really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great connection. Grant and his team are up to a lot of pretty incredible things. So I'm pleased to be connected through them.
Tell the audience a bit about our business. Considering you've got CPA in the business title, I assume you're a bean counter?
A little bit of a bean counter, at least at my core.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Me too.
so
Me too.
Yeah, which is great. And I think that's why we have an instant connection, Troy.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. But yeah, a little bit about the business, started in 2008, founded myself, maybe a little bit of backstory to that. Worked at a global firm. As someone who's gone through the public accounting background, you've experienced this, I'm sure, as well. You get to a point where you start building a skill set that's pretty valuable amongst that global firm. So you get pigeonholed into a certain area, and any sort of creative work goes away, and you get the most challenging, probably individual-based, looking at nonprofits and complex accounting requirements. And that was just not my passion. It didn't excite me, although it's needed. It just wasn't for me, and really felt like I had a passion for working with business owners. And at that point, decided, after just receiving a promotion and a discussion of a fast track into partnership, said, I quit. I want to start my own gig, because if I'm going to be doing this for the next 50 years, potentially, I want to be doing something I'm excited about and something that excites me and somewhere where I can have an impact. So somewhat fast forward from there, we went from 2008 to, I think we had $200,000 in revenue in our first year, up to cracking the $10 million number this year with 84 people that are all across Canada. And actually, we just hired our first international employee as we're scaling across the US as well in a cloud component, which is really exciting. And aside from just being a bean counter, although we do the accounting, tax, bookkeeping, we also started a law firm for small business owners. We do business coaching. We have $1 million a year coaching program, helps business owners grow and scale and earn their first $1 million a year. And we'll continue to innovate our market and our space by creating new products and services needed by the small business market.
That's great. So it's becoming a little bit of a one-stop shop in that sense, especially the business coaching. Obviously, I've done a fair bit of that, is much needed for the owners, because a lot of them feel lonely at the top. They've got no one to report to. There's no accountability, no fresh ideas. So yeah, that sounds like that's an exciting space that you're working in. And from what I'm hearing, it's something you really enjoy.
You know what? It's where I spend most of my time right now, between that and partnerships. So hitting an 8-figure business gets a little bit challenging, making sure we keep up our growth rates. So from getting on stages like we got connected today, making sure that we're sharing our message, we're informing people of the one-stop shop. But I really love spending time with business owners in the proactive space, helping them understand all of the failures and the challenges we've had to overcome, from 0 employees up to 80 plus. And the challenges of different levels of growth inside your business, hitting the $1 million, hitting the $3 million, hitting the $6 million, 10. We've gone through so many different hurdles in our business that being able to share that experience and help people get to that outcome faster is where I really love to spend my time.
Yeah. That's phenomenal growth, Bob. In 15 years, 1 to 84 team members and 10 million top line. So congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. It's scary. Like, there's days where it really takes, if you want to get in that sort of growth cycle, acquisitions are scary. They can be done in the right way. Culture is super important. But to get that growth up to that level, to hit the 10 million, there's moments where your hair is going to be on fire and you have to be okay with it. And, you know, there's going to be moments where your blood pressure goes up and you're not sure if something's going to make it, but you believe in yourself. Like, there's just so many different elements of it. Like, if you want to grow as a business owner, you've really got to be committed to getting yourself uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you have done a few acquisitions to help with that growth?
We just did one this past year. So we acquired, because we have more of a bricks and mortar business, it's actually, I mentioned, just outside Toronto. It's in a small city called Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. And our population is maybe 80,000 people. So for us to scale up to where we want to get to, we're going to be limited by our accounting expertise in an 80,000 population city. So what we started to do is we started to look for an acquisition in the cloud accounting space and in the cloud CPA space where they've built a remote team. And we found one that we're on the fastest growing companies list in our country. They also were just happened to be fastest growing. So we knew that they had an element of at least behavior or culture that we knew that they could fit into our model. So we looked at that as a way to maybe leapfrog that $10 million component and to create the scalability of building a team across Canada, across North America.
Yeah, great. And so how many full-time equivalents did that business come with to get you up to 84?
Yeah, so they had just under 30, 27. So we had a mix, right? We were about 55 in person at that time, which is around where we are now. But the recruitment opportunities for skilled people where you can say, it doesn't matter where you are in the country, in the world, we're just looking for this skill set. Our recruitment pot has just expanded. So we started off 2023 looking to build new capacity because that's just something that growing businesses we need to continue to focus on is the next $1 million of revenue. So we started looking at it and started building up this talent pool. And our HR team did an awesome job. They started pre-screening people. We actually had 80 people in a pool that were ready to say yes to working with us. They're waiting for offers. And we said it might take a month, 6 months, a year, but we're going to start at our priority list, our top 5. We're going to offer them now and continue to work our way down the list. So the scalability of a remote team is just way more effective than an in-person team with those skill sets so easily attainable.
Yeah, great. Well, it sounds like you're going through a new learning curve yourself and the business by moving a big part of the team into that remote side of working.
For sure. And I would say, so right before COVID, we had moved everything into the cloud. So funny, right? We're an in-office person group, 55 people. We moved everything into the cloud because we were able to have 24/7 monitoring. Our security was better. We could have IT plugged in from a remote standpoint. So we just happened to be ready to operate remote. And it allowed some people, if they were traveling, to be able to work, or if they needed to be away from the office, they could work. It just happened that we were set up to move on to the next level with the COVID environment, which ended up working out positively for us from a growth standpoint too.
Yeah. We'll talk about people and culture further down the questions, but I do want to touch on how did that integration go with the acquisition? Mentioned before we hit record, after university, my only real job was 3 years initially it was Price Waterhouse, and I was there when they merged with Coopers and Lybrand, pretty much halfway in the middle of my 3 years. And that was really an interesting experience, not just because it's massive international accounting firms, 2 of them, but just watching the 2 cultures, how they were integrated. I think they did a great job. But how did you find that experience? I know from what I've heard you say now that something you really focused on was making sure the cultural fit was right. That's one thing, but secondly is executing to make sure you don't fuck it up.
And before I answer that, I want to ask you, so this is interesting for me, on that sort of merger or acquisition that you were part of, what was the retention rate for both teams? Was it fairly high, or was there a lot of fallout in that change?
Geez, that was 27 years ago. I was in a very small team doing SAP security. We had about 8. We had 6. We grew to 8 after the merger or acquisition. I mean, they were both solid people in both businesses. So from memory, we didn't have that many people leave. It was just a big leap up. Obviously, a clash of 2 giant companies to then become the number 1 accounting firm in the world. It was a great experience. I don't recall anyone really moving on. That's because the leadership team and HR, etc., were well prepared. A lot of communication, which is, I think, is one of the keys in growing a business. And obviously, change is hard for people, and merging 2 cultures together is tenfold harder. So I think they nailed it, did a great job. Clearly, they're obviously very good at what they do and professional, but communication was the key in that to make it all go quite well for us.
Yeah, totally. And so on my experience, I would say it's very similar. What I would say is I'm very grateful for the fact that we took it very seriously up front, because when we acquired that remote team and they joined us, one, the reason we wanted to acquire them was because they had such talented people. There was so much value there across the board. We wanted to learn. We knew we could share with them some learnings. We had some learnings, and I wanted to build a best practice of two incredibly successful organizations. Before it even happened, not that we had that much time to plan for this, because a lot of it in our industry was just me and the former owner of the other firm having these discussions, right? You don't want teams to start getting involved in these to a great extent. So we started planning out the brand story and what it is that we're creating together, which is really a professional services firm that's focused on empowering entrepreneurs to have a global impact. And we started talking about the story that we're creating and the combination of two powerhouses in our small to medium sized market. And culture was the main focus. And we spent a lot of time. We actually rebranded. We talked about the two entities and which name would carry on. We rebranded as far as a logo and everything goes to tell the logo to tell more of the story of the new combined entities. But for sure, the focus being on the people. And regardless of how prepared and focused we were for it, we still had a few people who, after the merger of the two entities, didn't necessarily feel like they fit. Even though we've got 84 people and we've seen some growth across the years, there's still people who are maybe part of our organization who still want things to stay the same way they were 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And that's a big change for some people. And if they didn't necessarily feel like there was a fit for them at that moment, then their cage was rattled a little bit. And we had a few where that happened, and we did everything we could proactively. And ultimately, at the end of the day, there were a few people who left where you were like, okay, we can replace those people. Not that we wanted to, but maybe there's some extra skill sets we can add to make the team even stronger. And so in hindsight, our retention has been very high. At the time, when you lose one person, you're starting to shit your pants a little bit, Troy, right? Yeah. You're like, oh no, is this the start of something? But it wasn't. We did, again, lose a few, but really, the culture is getting even stronger. And I believe out of all of this, you mentioned this earlier, I've been learning so much and so much about leadership and reading books right now. I'm going through about 5 books a week. It's ridiculous because I'm just trying to retain everything and just trying to proactively plan. But looking now, going back through our core values and our mission and our purpose statement, and just revitalizing that with all of the individuals, their care factors, how we just do things now is a little bit different than how we did it before. So it's been a really great learning experience. And had you have asked me a month after we had this acquisition take place, I probably would have said I'd never do it again. And, it's funny, I was chatting with one of my coaching clients the other day because they were talking about an acquisition too. And they said, yeah, it's almost like having kids, right? Where you get all excited, you have the kid and you're like, oh my God, our life has changed. It's messy. We have no social life. Our relationship is kind of on the rocks. And then 6 months later, you're like, that was the best thing that ever happened. When are we having our next kid, right? And it's kind of the same, I feel like I'm kind of in that stage now where I'm going, okay, we made this work really, really well. It's challenged me more than anything I've ever done in my life, to be perfectly honest. But it has made me stronger, smarter, and more ready for the next level.
That's great. So 2008, when you launched, how old were you when you decided to jump into your own business?
Oh, yeah. So 2008, I would have been 26.
26, great. And you've given us some key numbers, or already done that question. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
You know what? I still feel like I'm working on that, Troy, to be honest. I will tell you there was one key moment of professional pride. I can't even remember the year. So we're in 2023 right now. So I'm going to say it was 6 or 7 years ago. I actually got admitted into fellowship with CPA Canada. And so for anyone who's not got an accounting background, that's essentially the Lifetime Achievement Award for being a professional. And it was really interesting because I was really excited that I got nominated and then ended up being a recipient. But I went to go at the event, I went to go up on the stage, and the person who was pushing everybody through alphabetically stopped me and they said, "I'm sorry, are you lost?" And I'm like,
Oh,
"What do you
no.
mean?"
What?
I said, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "No, this is for the fellowship." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Uh-huh." She goes, "But you're young." And
Yeah, I
I'm
was going
like,
to say, is this
"I
because you?
know, and
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited about it. You're killing me here."
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say it was the age because you would have been mid-30s.
Yeah, I would have been mid 30s at the time. And again, a pinnacle of a professional who takes ethics, integrity, and professional competence very seriously. Being part of getting recognized with that is ultimately you've done something dramatic to shift positively the reputation of the profession and advance the profession. And for me, that was probably the largest professional moment, most significant moment. Although I did have Here's another one though. Troy, maybe you can pull out some good stories in me today, but I had another moment, and I'm sure a lot of people will recognize this name. Back in 2016, right around the same time, I got a call from the CFO of Tony Robbins.
Right.
And I was like, CFO of Tony Robbins. I knew who he was, but my younger generation who works here now, they maybe wouldn't have known who he was back in the day. And they ultimately said, "We're recruiting to build Tony's Professional Accounting Association," which he called his Global Accounting Advisors. And we're recruiting for different countries. We've got Australia, we've got the US, we want to add Canada on there as well. We've been given your name from arguably the best business coach in the world, who's Rob Nixon, or sorry, best accounting business coach in the world, Rob Nixon. He's also from Australia. And we think you're our guy. We want to fly you down to one of Tony's business mastery events, join into the event. We'll kind of interview you, see what you think, and we'll go from there. And I had the opportunity to work with Tony and his team for 3 years, but I do remember when they called at the time, I think we had 5 or 6 team members.
Wow.
So we've had a lot of growth since,
Yes.
2015, 16.
Yeah.
And 5 or 6 team members. And I'm going, okay, the CFO of a large, arguably billion-dollar organization is calling me in my little office. I've got 5 or 6 people. I'm not in a major city in our country, and they're recruiting me. So for me, professionally at that point, I did kind of feel like, okay, I've done something here where I'm being recognized on a global scale. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. And fellowshipping with the CPA is a phenomenal achievement, particularly by your mid-30s. So congratulations, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Troy.
What does success look like to you?
Right. So funny, I'll actually circle back. So Rob Nixon, who was my first business coach, very good friend now. I had met up with him in Toronto maybe 6 months or so, and he asked me the exact same question. He said, "So what are you trying to create? What is it like you've kind of surpassed some milestones for being that one owner CPA firm? Like, what's your game plan?" And ultimately, I said, well, I want to create something that I don't believe has necessarily been created before with one owner. I want to reach $100 million revenue in my accounting firm. And I want to be the only owner in the firm with business partners who deliver their professional expertise in an incredible way. They get paid better than anyone else, but I just want to take on that risk and that growth myself. And I said, it's not for the $100 million in revenue, because I actually did this calculation the other day. We work with about 1,000 business owners across North America right now. And those 1,000 business owners essentially deal with 1,000 customers a year. So if I'm able to help positively influence 1,000 business owners right now, the impact they can have on those 1,000 lives, like we're touching 1 million lives and 10 million lives. And my goal is, as we continue to grow, that will continue to scale. So if I can 10x my global impact on the entrepreneurial space so that they can help change the world, improve medicine, change technology. Here's another market that we have a ton of clients in, is in the salon space. And I was talking to a salon owner the other day, and I said, what you guys do is incredible, because you have somebody who comes in who's feeling maybe okay or maybe a little down about themselves. They come in, you make them feel like $1 million. They go out with a smile on their face. Their confidence is improved. How many of those people do you deal with every year? Is it 1,000 people? Because if I can help you grow a team or save money to reinvest and to grow and to scale this up so you can put more smiles on faces, that's what I want to do. So not growing just for growth's sake, but to honestly just to have that impact and to know we've left our footprint on the world in a positive way.
Yeah, that's great. You went tenfold in about 7 years, 2016, from around 5 people. You had those 3 years working with Tony Robbins' team, but then within 7 years, you've gone from 5 to 55. So a factor of 11. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's been fun. And we've learned so much along the way. And I would say our marketing, if we want to chat about marketing, has transformed along that journey. So initially, brand recognition for me was huge. Testimonials, huge, sharing customer experiences, and then getting our existing customers to share that experience with other people. So referral strategies, like super inexpensive ways for our marketing and our brand to expand. Marketing at that point for me was going out and actually shaking hands. I was at every professional event. I could be even in my smaller city. We'd have the Chamber of Commerce events, any sort of business opportunity. I would be out there shaking hands, introducing myself. And then that evolved, right? I couldn't shake as many hands because I had more work to do. And it was like, how can we continue to do this more efficiently and at scale? And we started hiring, even initially social media, starting to get a social media following, starting to give value away. Such a huge marketing opportunity. Give, 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 give. And, again, my business coach early on said, you can actually go to your competitors, tell them exactly what you're going to do, share with them your best tactics, and none of them will do it.
That's right.
Because only the few are willing to go out and get that uncomfortable and adapt to that change. So giving away everything was great because it built trust, the know-like trust factor with us. Then we started into maybe ads, and we started getting into Google ads, and webinars were amazing, and free giveaways, ebooks. I wrote a book called The Wealthy Entrepreneur, giving that away for people as well so that they could see our expertise. And it was a way to, again, positively impact those people, support them on their journey. Up until now, Troy, I would say probably the last 6 months, my biggest focus has been on partnerships. And partnerships being that I have a lot of value, my team and I have a lot of value that we can bring to the marketplace. And how can that value, that financial expertise, that financial mastery help another group of businesses? We've really worked hard working with business coaches who have community of, let's say, 1,000 people in a specialized niche market who just need financial expertise to help them get stronger, to help them pay for the programs and the coaching. So our focus has been making relationships, which I have a huge network of business coaches, making those relationships and starting to test value add opportunities to contribute to those markets. That's been really, really huge. Working with software companies who have niche markets, who are really out there with a software solution for them where we can come in and support from a financial standpoint and a dashboard, metrics, like know where you're going. Let's start planning your business outcome. We're just a really great partner as an add-on with other entities who are doing great things to support business owners. So for me, a marketing standpoint now, because we've got the brand and the reputation, is to go in, establish these larger networks where we can scale 50, 100 people at a time, bring them in and change their lives.
Yep. Just back on something you said a minute ago about giving away a lot of free value and high quality value. That's something that is really driven home by Alex Hormozi. Have you read either of his books?
Yeah, I've met Alex a few times. $100 million offers from Alex is a great book. Yeah, even really smart guy. Maybe the most exciting entrepreneur in the world right now, in my opinion.
I agree. I really like his style. He's very clever. But even his other book, Gym Launch Secrets, I think it's called, even if you're not a gym owner, there's a lot of great nuggets in that book.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. I work in quite a few high-level coaching programs, and he's always kind of around there, right? Because he's in that coaching space, but he's also, as part of his acquisitions.com, is looking for those opportunities to go in, partner with people and scale.
I love that approach. Yeah, very
clever. So great. It's so great. Yeah.
Now, use Net Promoter Score for the audience. We'll have a link through in our show notes on how NPS works. It's not a percentage, it's a positive or a negative number. From one question, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or a colleague? Between 0 and 10. 0, I'm extremely pissed off. 10, I love you and I stop people on the streets and tell everyone to use your services. So What's your net promoter score?
As of last year, May, because we do it in May every year, it's the most challenging time in our business for delivery. So we figured now's a really good time for feedback. We were 73.2.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Congratulations. That's really good.
It's a commitment.
Yeah.
Right? It is 100% a commitment because there's some challenging pieces of feedback in there that we constantly have to learn about and improve upon. And we have to be willing to listen and learn and respond and positively change.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's great that you measure it. I'm a big fan of it. And that number for the audience, getting to 50 is very, very difficult. But anything above 70 is just phenomenal. So well done to you and the team.
And there's times too, Troy, right? Like I'm sure you've seen this. It can slide a little bit. It'll be interesting this year with the acquisition to see maybe some of the feedback that we get. There's a chance that it may slide, maybe it'll go up, but I think it's part of the core values of who you are as a business. It's your care factor. And when we were going through, when our leadership team was going through some of the core values component that I was mentioning earlier, we kept coming back to give a shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like we just give a shit about everything.
Yeah.
We give a shit about the quality. We give a shit about our people. We give a shit about our clients, our community. So it's like everything was like, without saying your core values, give a shit, because from a branding standpoint, some people might resonate with it, but others might not. That's essentially how we were founding this. And I believe the client journey, the client experience, because you give a shit, is why you measure it. And it's a commitment, and an infinite commitment to try and make it perfect, which you never will, because you can't just be all things to everybody, but we're going to die trying.
Yeah. And I like that you do it in May, because your tax season ends 30 April. So if your team has dropped the ball on a few things, because it's obviously a very stressful time for everyone, there's so much pressure, but that is great that you measure it at the most challenging time of the year, as you said. How did you fund your business?
Well, this is another good story, Troy. Again, I started on my own. I did make a small purchase of a bookkeeping business, and it was $220,000 was the purchase of this. And ultimately that gave me enough income to get me started. Obviously there was expenses related to that. That wasn't pure net income at that point. In fact, I think my first year I'm pretty sure I didn't make anything, let's be honest. But when I went to fund that, I remember going into a bank, and it was a Canadian bank. And I remember walking into the first banker, who I had kind of got his name from, and he had his feet up on the desk and he was reading a newspaper. I was like, well, this is an interesting way to kick off this meeting. And he said, yeah, have a seat. And I did. He kept the paper open, and I was like, what is happening right now? Is this just what's going to happen to me? And he said, so what makes you think the bank is going to fund your business? Like, you don't have any experience being a business owner. And I said, no, you're right. I do have a lifetime of education on this source, including a master's degree and a professional designation, which will help you from a professional credibility standpoint. Hang your shingle. Like, I'm here. There's demand for the industry. I had a business plan. And he said, will your parents co-sign this for you? And I said, should they have to? And he said, well, if you're getting any money from this bank, they're going to have to. And I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to look for another source, because I refuse, after how hard I've worked and how prepared I am to make this successful, I refuse to have my parents' name on this. And really, really shocking, frustrating, emotionally devastating moment. But within the same week, bank actually right across the street, got a connection, completely different. They brought me into their boardroom in their like VIP client section. They had water poured on the table for me. At that time, I was like, this is just, they're treating me like gold. And they ultimately said, and how would you like to repay it? Let's work on a repayment schedule. They funded the entire deal, and they got me off the ground. And think back to $220,000 was a really big deal. Back then, they took a risk on me. And in fact, although I'm not super loyal to banks because interest rates can be so devastating to cash flow of a business, I am back with them now and really excited to continue that relationship.
That's great. And no investors along the way. It's just yourself, 100% owner.
100% owner. Yeah. All risk on me, right?
That's right.
It's one of those things. And I will say, as a business advisor, partnerships are great when I'm talking about strategic partnerships. They get challenging when you bring business partners in and money gets involved. And not to say that it can't work, but please, if you're looking at a partnership and money gets involved, make sure you outline how the partnership works, how you work together. Yeah, shareholders agreement, partnership agreement, whatever that looks like. Let's get it outlined. Let's get compensation outlined. Let's get contributions outlined. Let's get exit plans outlined. Super, super important, because if those things aren't outlined, people, it's just natural humanity, start to change over time, and maybe contributions change and maybe outcomes change. And all of a sudden there's resentment in a partnership. It's just got to be tight. And I'll tell you, I'm going to take this all the way to the end. I will at some point create some phantom ownership opportunities for my team who's helped us get here so that they're earning and participating in it. But I don't want them to have to take on the stress and the financial liquidity issues that I've had to deal with and probably will again, because I know I'll over leverage myself or leverage myself right to the end. It's harder when you have to get multiple people to say yes to a business decision. I can say yes, they can be strategic, and we can still do it together.
As Jim Morrison said from The Doors, people are strange. And there's a great text and saying from one of my mentors, Mark from Manager Tools, the #1 podcast downloaded. His father had this saying, this text and saying, the definition of conflict, two people in the same county. Because, you know, it has their seasons, ups and downs, but we're also just wired differently. So it's really, really difficult, isn't it? I've had over 30 business partners. I think I'm up to 31 or 32 now. I need to recount. In 15 businesses in 3 countries over the last 24 years. So I've seen a lot of shit, good and bad, go wrong with that shareholder agreements piece. We've just finished one in this rum and whiskey distillery in the Gold Coast that I chair. Took us months, but it's so important to get that right. Some sophisticated investors on the cap table, really good founder, but we've all agreed that we've got to get this, as expensive and time consuming as it is, get it right so we can then focus on the growth and not be distracted by any issues that come up. You just point at the shareholders agreement if anyone's got an issue.
Yeah, and it has to be done. Because if it's not there, then you have no rules of engagement. And that will help your 31 partners be successful together. The more tied down that is, the better outcome you're going to get.
Certainly don't have 31 partners anymore. And there's some that I never shouldn't have gone into business with. But anyway, that's for another podcast.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growsmallbusiness.com.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I would go. I like the fact. So wouldn't it be nice if there was just a bottomless pit of money? That would make things easier. I'd be a $100 million company already because I'd buy it. So that would be a nice situation. I don't know that I regret any of the pathways. Like, we've had our constant challenges. We've had investments in marketing and coaching and different programs that have been an absolute fail along the way. We've hired the wrong people. We've made strategic acquisitions that may or may not have worked the way that we wanted to, but I wouldn't change any of it because it's made me stronger. It's made me smarter, and it's really allowed me to be a good advisor. So would I go back into my industry? 100%. Would I invest more into the coaching space because that's where my true passion is? Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so audience can learn from it?
I will tell you, it's been in the last 6 months. It's been through this acquisition. It has been through integrating 2 cultures with 55 and 30 people, making sure that everybody knows exactly what their objectives are, where we're going together, building trust fast. That would be probably the biggest challenge would be, I'm a good human. Why doesn't everybody trust me right away? But they have no reason to. Am I doing things for the right reason? Do we have a great story about how we've got to where we are? Absolutely, but there's still no reason for them to trust me. So the time that needs to be dedicated to relationships and building that trust in a larger organization is so important. And I would say not only is it the new people that are coming into the organization. It's the existing people who just felt like this was how it was going to go, throw an acquisition in there. And now all of a sudden they're questioning what's their opportunity? Where do they see themselves? Are these new people that they don't know going to take their opportunity away? Just building that trust and transparency and aligning that culture has definitely been the most challenging part of my professional career, to the brink of I need to put every now and again, I need to put a podcast on and go for a walk, because the emotional strain that this can have, where it just seems like problem, 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 problem. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That step back can be extremely painful. So here's one piece of advice I would say: when challenging times happen, find a way that works for you to get yourself back to positive and momentum. Because when you get knocked down, you need to figure out how the hell you get back up and get back up as fast as possible with an action plan. Because feeling sorry for ourselves when we get set back isn't going to help us. It's not going to help anything we're creating. You got to find the way that can help you get back on that beast mode where it's like, okay, I've got this. And for me, it's listening to either if it's YouTube or it's podcasts. I've leaned on my guy, Tony Robbins, a lot during this, where I'll go talk or I'll go listen to him and him talking about resilience and how to get through tough times and all those things. Because when you start thinking about it, it helps you get past it and know that this little blip in your system is totally overcomable. And we need to get ourselves past it. So that's a big one. Spend the time with the people. Building trust is 100%. And I think not even just an acquisition standpoint, but if you want to build an organization that's going to be successful in something that's bigger than you, building an organization of trust and communication is going to be so important.
Totally. And the way to build that trust is to build the professional relationship with each team member, each of your direct reports. And something that Mark from Manager Tools talks about is the 3 powers in the workplace. So you've got the role power: I'm your boss. If you don't do as I say, I'm going to fire you. Technical power: I know more about this topic than you do. And then the most impactful one is relationship power, the professional relationship you build with that person. And the way to do that, and that trust obviously comes with that, but the way to do that is spending time with them, which is obviously what Manager Tools advocates: the weekly one-on-one 30 minutes with sitting down with your team member. That is how trust is built.
100%. And it's so funny, Troy, that you're talking about that, because that's something that we've just started to instill. It didn't seem to be as important of a check-in when everybody was in the same environment and it was like a constant check-in where everybody knew what everybody was doing. But I would say the add-on of the remote team and anybody who's got remote workers or hybrid workers, that check-in is so important because they feel isolated and alone until you make them feel valuable and you care about them. You show that you care by asking those questions and dedicating time to spending with them to make them the best version of themselves and to just see how they're doing. So I completely agree that that is imperative.
Yeah, well, most HR surveys show that pay is about the 5th reason why someone works where they do. And that feeling trust and validated by their line manager is ranked above pay. Obviously, you've got to pay around market rates. It's a hygiene factor, but there are 3 or 4 things above pay that managers can do, and most are pretty shit at it, which is why 70% of people quit managers. They don't quit jobs. And I think a lot of small business owners just don't invest the time that's needed to become better managers or invest in their team, that professional relationship with their team. So yeah, it's great you're on it.
Yeah, I agree. And, part of reading all these books that I've been on to, like this mission that I've been on, is learning leadership and management, not just for me, but now that we've got multi-levels of managers, now we've got maybe everybody isn't as invested as I am emotionally to read these books and to find these trainings and these resources like you're talking about, right? So I need to go find these, share resources with them and help them become the best managers and support their team, create that care factor. So Troy, this is where you tell me, here's the best resource for me to jump into, because I need to stop spinning my tires reading everything too. Share that with me, would you?
Yeah, well, I'll email you a couple of books. I assume you haven't read any of the Manager Tools books. So Mark's written The Effective Manager and The Effective Hiring Manager. I'll email them through to you. Their podcast is awesome. It's been going since 2005. Their website is woefully shit, which I keep telling Mark. They've just got to, anyway, that blocks a lot of people going, is this stuff any good? Because their brand is just terrible. But anyway, you've got to get past that. Their content and their advice is phenomenal. It's all based on data. You know, they were both in the Navy, I think it was. It might have been the Army, both engineers, then went into the Army. His business partner, Mike, went on to run some CIO of a couple of Fortune 500 companies, etc. They know their stuff. Big corporate advice in there, but for small business owners, I think you pull 80% of what they say is relevant for you. So I'll shoot you through a link to the podcast I think you should start with, which are the basics, which talks about one-on-ones, feedback, coaching, and delegation. And they've got in-person conferences as well now that COVID's kind of behind us. So that's the best resource. If you want to become a better manager, I'd recommend start with their 2 books and their podcasts.
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny that you say that, the 80%. And I feel like even if I can get 5% out of a book, where we're just talking about the structure of meetings and check-ins, we just started implementing that. That one thing that I got from one book, that's changed everything to be able to do that. So any resources, so small business owners out there, man, we have to invest in our learning. And if we can continue to align ourselves with people who've maybe been there, done that, got the result, got there faster, we can invest in working with those people. And I think that's Troy is doing as well with that. With Mark, you'd mentioned that he's been your mentor, right?
Yep.
So incredible to find mentors who've been there, done that. And we can get there faster, maybe without some of the stress and strain. Maybe we don't have to read 20 books. We can just read the one, or they've got the resource. Man, we can learn from other people if we're listening and we're present.
Yeah. I had Mark on the podcast, episode 86. I'll shoot that through to you as well. The other one around this, I highly recommend. Have you read Marcus Buckingham's book, First Break All the Rules, What the World's Best Managers Do?
I have it on my audiobook list, but I haven't got into it yet.
I think it's about 20 years old, but it is a classic. Some great stories in there, mainly around how. So he wrote it with Gallup, the big survey organization, and they did some work for a hotel chain. They don't say which one, an international hotel chain, and they wanted to identify the A player in each team in each hotel in every country, and then study those people and find why they were A players, what things made them different from everyone else. The absolute star in each team, whether it's the cleaning team, whether it's the concierge, whatever. So they did this massive research for this hotel chain. And there's a great story in there about one of the cleaners, and they asked just, how do you go about cleaning a room? That was a very open question. And her answer was really, really powerful. Just the way she thought about the client basically is what bore out. So then they could go upstream and fix their recruitment procedure, the questions they asked through to the job ads, through the job description, etc. It's a great book. It's 20 years old, but still very relevant today.
Yeah, 100%.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I would say, honestly, it's been leadership. You know, fortunate that education is really solid in training for my foundation, right? You and I have got a similar background. It's great. They've got a university program that trains exactly the technical competence we need. And it's fairly black and white. The black and white changes year after year with regulations and legislation changing. But moving into the soft skills, always very compassionate, caring, genuine, but to learn how to actually lead people, and not just one person, but leading a team, has probably been the area that I needed to learn the most about. And truthfully, Troy, looking at it, we've got the 84 people on hand right now. We'll be 100 by the end of the year. I now have to become the leader of 200 people.
Yeah.
Because that's the next phase. And I can't jeopardize or risk the relationship with my team by not being that leader before they get there. And so for me, continuing to learn that has been the greatest thing, because the alignment of our team, when our team is on and they're in their give a shit mode, and we're aligned on goals, objectives, and the fact that we want to empower entrepreneurs, when they get excited about it, our outputs multiply.
Yep.
And that's based on leadership and creating the culture of excellence. And for me, that's been so huge to continue to learn that.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Yeah, the step back. You know, it's been interesting. Although I love people, love working with people, love having conversations with people, never really wanted to have the tough conversations with people. And I don't mean as the accountant or the bean counter, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with telling somebody they owe tax money. That's okay. But having the conversation with team members to say the trust factor isn't there, or you're not doing things for the right reason, or you've missed your targets, or whatever that is. That's been something that I've hated to do along the way. And you have to learn to embrace it and become good at it. And that, for me, if I could eliminate that part of the business altogether, I totally would.
Yeah. What do you love most about growing a small business?
I love creating an environment of passion and excitement and building the team. And one of the great pieces of success that I felt like I get this at different stages, and I can tell you, when I first started getting it and what the experience is now, is when I was first being able to pass things off to another accountant that I had trained and know that they were going to be able to do the job, do it right, and get the outcomes that the client needed. And the first person that I was really able to do that with is one of the partners of the firm right now, Patrick Sweeney. And I remember getting to the point where it was really challenging to give stuff away. I really wanted to maintain ownership of it only because I cared so much about the outcome. And watching him now, like the growth that he's had over the last 10 years we've been working together, his ability to impact clients, like I would never be able to do what everybody in the organization can do. The fact that we've empowered people like Patrick to do great things is pretty awesome, super great pride, to the point where now I have people reaching out to me who are like, oh, thank you for, working with us or getting our financial reporting done. We were able to buy our home, our dream home. And I have no idea who these people are, who worked with them, whatever. It's just the team met them. They brought them into our environment, they delivered for them, and they got them the outcome that they needed. And that person was positively influenced by something that we built together. And I don't even know who they are. That is something that is probably the coolest experience of growth, is being able to have that impact without me having any part of it.
Yeah, that's great. What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I'll say this. Again, a lot of this deals around probably getting over a scale of being able to build the team. And one of the biggest mindset shifts I would probably say I had to get over was that performance isn't just a number, or that isn't the only thing that should be measured as far as how team members are contributing to the success of an organization, that it has to be trust. How much is someone trusted in the organization? How much does a manager trust individuals on their team to be able to give them stuff they know is going to get done? How much trust needs to be measured to know that our clients trust us implicitly, to know that we will always be there for them? So creating that as an outcome versus how many tax returns did you get done? You got 50 done. I wanted 51. That's not good enough. That's not the only metric. And although it is something that we have to monitor, I believe that if we can get that trust factor dialed, and we can get focused on creating an environment of trust all the way down to delivering for our clients, that those metrics, those financial metrics, will be an outcome much greater than if we were tracking them as an overall goal.
Yep. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I would say the number one would be resilience. And I'll say resilience, but then I'll walk into a habit. So I feel like resilience needs to be something that every business owner can deal with and cope with, because it's not easy. And the reason that so many businesses fail, number one, is they run out of cash. 82% of businesses that fail because they run out of cash flow, not because they're not the smartest people, they don't have the best business plan, they don't have an incredible product, just because they're not managing their cash.
A lot of those are even profitable. They're making money, but they've just run out of cash.
100%. Yeah. And it's so funny. One of the most interesting conversations I have every year is, Bob, you're saying we made $100,000, but where's the cash? It's not in my bank account. And we walk people through that. Yeah, it's you took money out, it's invested in inventory, you bought capital, you're selling things on account, people owe you money, you're prepaying for some items. So lots of stuff around that. But 82% of businesses that fail, it's because they run out of cash. That similar statistic in the 80%, and I can't remember exactly what it is, are businesses that survive week to week on cash. And like, that's stressful. So we as business owners, we put ourselves in that position. And even if we're smart enough to not put ourselves in that position, I still put myself in that position every now and again. Like you stretch yourself because you're so committed to your goals. So we need to, if we want to push ourselves, we need to learn how to get resilient, because individuals are going to challenge us. If we all of a sudden start having success, people are going to knock us down. We're going to be challenged from employees. We're going to be challenged from clients. We're going to be challenged from competitors. And we need to know how to deal with this and how we can continue to push forward. And again, I would say the habit is to continue to find a way to get yourself in the mindset of a champion, where you can continue to push through and persevere through these roadblocks, because they're going to happen. And the harder you push, the harder these roadblocks are going to be. So just be prepared for it. Get yourself in a good mindset space, get yourself in a healthy mindset space, support yourself with people who can encourage and support you on your journey, and you will continue to be successful. And ask for help when you need it.
Yep. Can you talk how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
For sure. So I would say a huge win for us recently has been our recruitment process. So I'll quickly walk you through that. Recruitment is as much a marketing exercise as finding your next client, and if not more important, because I feel like one of the things we do really well is we tell the story of what we're building. And I can give you a quick example of this too. We had an interview for an accounting manager a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't with me, it was with one of the partners, and no fault of theirs. They went through the interview and the candidate ultimately said, "No, I don't think we're interested." Now, I was looking on paper at this candidate and I checked in with the partner and said, what was it? Was this person a fit? Yeah, they're a great fit. Not sure what happened. I was like, great. On paper, their experience was exactly what we needed at this stage of our business. So I set up a time and I said, I just want to have a follow-up interview. I know you declined. I just want to have a conversation. And nowhere in there did I offer that candidate anything that they weren't offered already. I talked about what it was that we were building together. And at the end of our conversation, I did a lot of talking because it wasn't necessarily an interview. I just said, I just want you to know what we're up to, and I think you want to be part of it. And at the end, all he said was, "I'm all in. When can I start?" And I think part of the recruitment process needs to be telling that story, because like you're saying, Troy, money is definitely a security need. We need to hit the money factor that ticks the box, but that's not what it is that is going to have somebody passionate about staying or growing, or maybe even choosing you over somebody else, because somebody's probably offering the same salary. We need to tell the story of the journey of where we're going and what we're going to create together that will build a purpose greater than us. And so when we're recruiting, we need to be sharing that story. We need to create landing pages. We need to create videos, recruitment videos. And one of the most successful components I've had is we talk about our mission, our values, and what we're creating in a video. And whenever I see a candidate that maybe connects with me on LinkedIn or somewhere where I'm like, I really want that person on my team, I send them a personalized message and say, check this out. And then I'll maybe send them an article. Like the Globe and Mail in Canada is the major business magazine, newspaper. They have the fastest growing companies list. And I send them an article that we're featured in as being a fastest growing company and say, this is what we're doing. Here's some of the recognition that we're getting along our journey. This is something that I think would really be valuable for you. Come and join us. And it works so often. So that's been a huge success for us. I would say a pitfall that maybe I've had in the past as well has been hiring maybe too quickly and not assessing the core values of how someone would fit with the organization, but looking at their skill set and saying we can make it work, where it should be the other way around. It should be, we can train skills, but it's really hard to train core values of an individual. We need to make sure that they align. And if they're worth investing in, then we can take an individual who's aligned and excited and passionate and teach them the skills they need. So we've done it the opposite way around. I can tell you it doesn't work. It's short-lived. It may be a nice shiny object syndrome that you have this person with this skill set, but if you're building something for an infinite period, not a short-term play, recruiting for the wrong reasons is a bad idea.
Absolutely. So 2 things on that. I heard from a guest a couple of weeks ago, a tip in what they do in their recruitment is they get down to the final few candidates and each of them has to get up and present to 3 or 4 people that are in the recruiting team they have to get up and present how their core values, their personal core values, and explain how they align with the business's core values. And he said 50% of people don't turn up because they don't want to do the work or their values don't align. And then you get to assess the other 50%. And he said that's been really good for them to make sure they get the right core value and cultural fit for their very fast growing team.
Well, so here I'll jump in and add one thing. So as we're going through our recruitment process, one thing that we're essentially going to create here, and this is kind of a next evolution for us, is that before anybody gets a formal offer, they're going to watch our core values and they're going to sign a declaration that they are going to commit to delivering on every core value. And not to say that we won't make mistakes and whatever, but are you committed to accountability? Are you committing to have the person beside you's back before anything else? Are you committed to getting the client the outcome that they need before taking vacation hour? We want to create the flexibility for you to have all of it that you ever need, but the clients need you. I'll take care of you if you take care of the clients. And so we're focusing on building that out to say, yeah, we have a formal offer, but before you even accept this, you need to know who the hell we are. And you need to sign off that you're fully aware of what you're getting yourself into. And once you do that, there's your offer. So that kind of ties into the core value piece you're talking about.
Caffeine's just kicked in. The synapses are reconnected. I've just remembered. You proactively look for A players well before you need them. You do stalking on LinkedIn and connect and reach out to people.
We do. So for me, I tend to just be constantly looking for people who I feel would be a good fit in our environment. And I'll start laying the groundwork and just having the conversations, including our COO that we hired him in September this year. Part of just growing the team, knowing an acquisition was coming, I needed somebody who I could rely upon for the operations side of the business. And his hire came as probably a 3-year relationship of discussions on LinkedIn, to the point where about a year ago, he finally said, listen, if an opportunity comes up in an operational role, let me know. I'd love to chat about it. So then we knew this was coming down the pipe. He came on board. He already knows who we are, our mission, our purpose, that he wanted to be part of it. And then it was just waiting for the right time. But we also, from a recruitment standpoint, our human resources, we constantly have job postings up. And we're always bringing people in. And really, some jobs are just a continuous add-on. So we've got actually a pool of candidates that are about 50 deep right now, of people that are pre-screened, pre-interviewed. They're ready to go. As soon as we're ready to go, maybe some of them take on other opportunities, but we've got this pool of candidates right now that will help us in our scaling process.
That's great, Bob. And that's very clever what you've done to build that capacity ready to help with the growth, especially in professional services. You've got to go out and win the work, then go back and recruit to do the work. And it's, oscillating all the time. It can be quite stressful. But the fact that you've gone out of your way to proactively build that pool of 50 people, and the LinkedIn stalking, et cetera, I advocate that. I heard that from a guest a year or so ago. A very fast growing company, similar time frame. Actually, his time frame is probably 3 or 4 years, but he's around the 80 people mark. But he's grown very quickly because he spends an hour or two a week looking on LinkedIn for A players and building that relationship. And small business owners just do not invest enough in recruitment, is my belief. They're shit at it. They don't read the right books or read any books about it and learn from the last, mishire that they've failed. What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Yeah, short and sweet, because I think I've maybe beat this one to death a little bit, but getting very clear on your core values and what it is that you're creating that's bigger than you. I think and enforce it, right? There's potentially some shifts in every business. People change and evolve, but we live and die by our culture and our core values. If people aren't buying in, then we've got to move on, because that's really the lifeblood of our business.
Yeah. Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Like balance in life?
Yeah.
Fairly well. I would say every relationship that anybody has got this middle ground line, and every relationship, even if we think of pricing, somebody is coming in as a buyer, they want it for less money, and the person who's selling it wants more money. And there's this negotiation, and hopefully we end in a middle ground zone where either both people are unhappy or both slightly happy. I would say every relationship, including my household, my friendships, this is what I need to do. and I'm going to be present and I'm going to be available and I'm going to be committed to this. But like this, being part of this business is part of me, and building this is something that's very important to me. So I need to be here when I need to be here, and it'll be scheduled out, and it'll be, I'll be home for dinners and I'll be at all the kids' events, but there's going to be nights, there's going to be weekends, there's going to be travel. And it's, pushing back and forth on that line. And I feel like towing that line is a super important piece with relationships, and it's finding that middle ground. I feel like I'm okay.
That's good. It sounds like you already do a lot of professional development. Any other tips for the audience on that?
Yeah. So the only piece I would say, and I know I do coaching, and, we don't coach people all around the world, but honest to God, find somebody who does coaching and someone who's done what you want to do, and go pay them to learn from them. It will be the best investment you could ever make. Get the resources and the firepower you need from somebody who's been there, failed, done it, and then come back and wants to share. That'll change your life.
Great advice. Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
I do not.
All right, Bob, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I would say managing people. Everybody would say it's an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And you could be the most caring, compassionate, giving person, and somebody won't like that. So I would say it's been the most challenging and rewarding all at the same time. But yeah, if you're looking at building a team, continuing to have open and honest conversations, candid conversations, and building a relationship of trust is where it's at. But that's for sure one of the biggest challenges.
Yep, people are strange. And
people are strange.
Just going back to adding people to the team, one of my strong beliefs, I got this from Mark Horseman from Manager Tools, is that the most important job a manager does is recruitment. So I know I'm on a bit of a rant here, but I just don't think business owners and managers in business take recruitment seriously when it's the most important fucking thing you do. Because if you get a B player or a C player on the bus, or an arsehole or a toxic person, we've all seen it and experienced it. It's a terrible experience, not just for you, but for those people around, the A players that are there, and they'll start thinking about leaving. Rant over. Favorite business book.
Can I add that?
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
Troy. I just want to add one piece to that, because I think you're right. Recruitment is so very important, but I would say retention is also equally important. So once you get those A players in, make sure you've got a game plan for them and that you support them.
Yeah.
Because it's like growing a business, right? If your client retention, if your net promoter score is 0, and you're filling the bucket with all this great marketing, lead gen, sales, referrals, it's great, but you got all these holes in the bucket because you can't deliver for your clients, you're never going to grow, and you're going to be spinning your tires. And the same thing is with building the team. Absolutely, you got to get the right players in, but once they're in, you have to have a plan for how you keep them and how you keep them encouraged and supported.
Totally agree. Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Yeah, I'm going to say right now on this topic of culture and core values, I'm going to say Simon Sinek, The Infinite Game, is a fantastic book. Understanding the difference between short-term thinking and long-term thinking, even just the verbiage of building something that's greater than you could ever accomplish, right? Going essentially for the unaccomplishable, but just dying, trying, and dying on the line. Really, really awesome. I love Simon and everything he brings to the table, but that book is something very special.
Great. Yeah, I love Simon's writing and his teachings. I haven't read that one yet, so I'm adding that one to my list. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Yeah. Well, this podcast is great, Troy. I love your podcast. It depends. I feel like I shift every now and again to different podcasts based on the different need that I have to fill at the time. I love Gary Vee's podcast. Gary Vee, I feel like, brings in a spectrum of a whole bunch of different thinking. I was also a guest on his podcast, so I'm happy and thrilled about that. So love to throw some love towards Gary Vee that way. But for me, continuously changing. Alex Hormozy's podcast is amazing. Right. Alex Sharfin, who's Billionaire Code, his podcast is fantastic too. He's pretty aggressive on the entrepreneurial personality type, but we can all agree that we're a little bit different. So if you want to listen to that. So again, I change depending on the time. Tony Robbins, for sure. Love to go back to him when I feel like my mindset needs a bit of a check-in. But yeah, lots of good stuff out there.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Cloud accounting. And I'm not saying this based on the fact that we offer cloud accounting services. I ultimately mean get yourself a cloud accounting software solution so that you can have up-to-date financial reports of where your business is at. You need a dashboard in your business, because if you don't know what the score of the game is, how do you know what strategy you need? How do you know if you're winning, or how do you know if you're losing? And those 82% of businesses that fail because they run out of cash, it's because they don't have the transparency and they don't have the foresight to know that they're going to run out. Because there's tools and tricks we can implement now to alleviate cash flow strain. You just need to know where you're at so that you know what tools to introduce.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 15 years ago?
I would say buckle up. It's going to be a long journey. It's going to be a challenging journey, but it's going to be the most rewarding journey that you ever go on in your life. So enjoy it, embrace it, but be ready for the challenges ahead.
Well, congratulations, Bob, to you and the team. 1 to 84 people over those 15 years, $10 million top line, fellowship in the CPA is an amazing achievement, and also being invited to work with Tony Robbins for 3 years professionally. And you've just got a wonderful approach to business. I align with everything you've said. I think this is going to be our longest podcast ever yet, beating one of my other mentors in the distilling space, David Vitale from Starwood Whiskey, now in America, in Seattle. But I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we could talk for another couple of hours. So pity we're at opposite ends of the world. Otherwise, we'd catch up for a beer and I'm sure chat about business more.
100%. Troy, thank you for having me. Appreciate all the questions, and happy if anybody wants to reach out, if I can support anybody along their journey, please feel free to.
We're getting some great iTunes reviews. For those listening, please pop over to your podcast app and leave us a review.